So once again, thank you for this this opportunity that you guys have given ourselves, that we sit and talk a bit about poultry farming, which is not a new practice. You had some of you are starting. We have been supporting groups within the community. We, through the different projects, we are pitching poultry out there as an important venture or enterprise, given that it does not require much space, and then the turnaround time is also short if you compare with the rest of the livestock. So our session today will basically be on sharing a bit the underlying sciences and some of the technical aspects and standards. And then on the other side, we'll also hear from a very seasoned agribusiness expert who also happens to be a renowned poultry farmer in the northern part of the country, and that is Christine Joyce Adong, who is also part of our group, which is Pitakoa Ventures, which, to say something small about it, is an organization, let me put it this way, of professionals who have come together to contribute to the development agenda of the East African region. So what we do, we do share knowledge, like we are doing through the webinars that we are doing. We offer our consultancy services across the board. So to government agency, to private individuals, to NGOs, and to businesses out there. We're also engaged in some productive activities, but most importantly, we are very keen that there is improvement in how we practice different aspects of agriculture. And from the group that I see here, I see professionals in very many fields, and it's quite important for the diversification of our livelihood that we are able to know more than one way of making money, okay, to put money in the pocket, to be able to afford food within the household. So yes, today I will share quickly some of the aspects that you need to keep an eye on as you enter into poultry farming, but also what you should avoid, okay? So there'll be the do's and the don'ts. Then afterwards, the second segment, Tina will come in and then tell you really from the practical side, how do you handle diseases? How do you receive your, let's say you're doing, you're going for day-old chicks. When you receive them, what are the processes that you need to follow? How do you minimize mortality? How do you make sure that you feed them right? How do you make sure that the environment is the right one? Okay, so let's begin. Say that you can see it. So our session objectives are basically two. The first one is we like to expose the participants to underlying science, which I've already told you, the underlying science behind several occurrences and processes in poultry keeping, and then to discuss the positives and negative practices, truth and myth. At the end of this, we will try to answer one big elephant that has always lingered when it comes to poultry. That was it the chicken or the egg that came first? We will see when you start looking at the life cycle of the birds. Otherwise, just an outline of what we're going to be looking at. I know that we spoke about poultry, but we're going to focus very much on chicken, because when you speak of commercial poultry production, the majority are doing chicken. I know others that do turkey, others that do ducks, pigeons, and others. But today we're going to focus very much on poultry. So I will handle how to plan for the enterprise and set up the business. Then we look at housing and infrastructure. Then we shall see breed and stock selection. Then we look at nutrition and feeding. Okay. Then sorry, I'll be handling from setting up the business up to the nutrition and feeding bit. Then Tina, and this will really mainly be the underlying science, then Tina will handle the more practical aspects of managing the health and biosecurity, brooding, and managing the flock overall. Then how to handle the production in itself, the different stages of growth, from chicks to growers to finishers. Okay, all these processes, she's going to be taking us through it. Then also, we know that chicken waste now carries some, not just some, but a lot of value, but then it also has an impact on the environment in itself. So we need to be able to manage that and see if there's any value from what would have been waste. Okay, then the marketing bit. Okay, how do you market? How do we put ourselves within the value chain, both horizontally and vertically? Okay, then what are some of the records that you need to keep, and how do you do the monitoring of our enterprise? And lastly, what are the key performance indicators, things that will show you whether this enterprise is moving in the right direction or not? And lastly, how to manage risk, and what are the common pitfalls that you need to keep an eye on. Okay, that should be what we'll try to speak about in the available time. If I'm going to be too fast, please make sure that you tell me so that I can adjust my speed. Now, we're going to start with what poultry is. In many literature, you might find it clustered together with the rest of the livestock. But FAO decided that we should have a distinct definition of what poultry are, which are really birds that we keep at home in captivity, primarily for the production of meat or eggs, which we use for consumption or we sell, or any other economic purpose out there. So let's distinguish this from the wild birds, but also from the birds that we keep at home for other purposes. Like I know many people keep parrots, the famous kasukus. We keep them for spying, because once you get back home, they'll start repeating the things that were being said at home while you were away. So our poultry will literally include chicken that you see there. You're going to get this presentation so that you can know the different parts of your bird, so that next time you call a vet and you want to, and the vet asks you, what do you see? You can be able to say, the claw is like this, the hook is like this, the shank is the secondaries, the wattle has some bleeding, the beak is like this, Our second one is turkey. We have also included for you, there are scientific names, there are botanical names, so you can also see the different parts of the turkey, so that you can, turkey has as many parts on it of interest, just like chicken. Okay, so turkey is Meleagris. Other poultry, we have the duck. You can see the names there. It's Anas platyjos. Then we have guinea fowl, which is Numida meleagris, from the turkey family, actually. Then you have the ostrich. Okay, I'm not going to bite my tongue pronouncing them. Then we have the goose. Many times some people confuse the goose and the duck, but there's a huge difference, as you can see physically there. The goose is way bigger, and it has a long neck. Then you have the pigeon, and you have the quail, cotton eggs. So those are really the poultry that I generally kept at home, domesticated for commercial and livelihood purpose, meaning what to for eating and all that. Now, a very quick one. I'm going to rush through the life cycle of the poultry that we showed the other side. So we have a name for the adult male, adult female, and then also the age at which they start to lay eggs. Their incubation period, meaning the number of days or weeks that the egg takes if it's incubated before they hatch. Then how you call the newly hatch, and then how the young males are called and how the young female are called. So I'll not go through all of them. I'll just spot a few so that I can have the feel really. If you start with the chicken, you see the adult male. Adult male, we have a rooster and a capon. A rooster is entire. A capon is castrated. Someone is going to ask me, how do you castrate? Go and find out. But you do castration. The adult female is called a hen. Hens normally start laying at 18 weeks, and the eggs are incubated for 21 days. They hatch a chick, and when the chicks grow, when they get their first set of feathers, they're basically out of the chick bracket. They become the males are the cockerel, and then the female are pullet. Put the S there. Then when you see the turkey, the male turkey, you might hear the British love saying it a lot. It's the tom or the gobbler. The female adults is a hen. Turkeys take 7 months before they begin laying eggs, and the incubation period is 28 days. So they produce, when the eggs hatch, they produce poult. A young male is called Jex with S. Then the young female is just the young hen. Then I'm going to skip the duck, but the male duck is called a drake, the female is a hen. Something that we use a lot in English idioms. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. The female adult goose is also called a goose, but the male one is called a gander. When they hatch gosling. You can see the little pigeons are called squirrels. Then the ostrich also have a rooster. And then when they hatch, they produce hatchlings. So you will look at this page, okay? And you see the details, but you see lots of juveniles everywhere. Now, let's look at business enterprise planning and business setup. There are mainly 4 important areas that you need to look at, okay, that you need to keep a very good eye on when you are setting up your poultry business. Number 1 is you need to be clear of the objective. Why are you setting up this poultry business? Is it only for eating at home, or are you going? Tina is experiencing some network issues. Somebody let me know by putting a thumb sign if you can hear me right, or it's my network which is problematic. You can unmute and then you tell me if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you well.
Okay. So Tina, please check your connection. So the objective and the system that you're going to use has to be very clear. Okay. One is, are you going to go into production of broilers, layers, or dual purpose? Dual purpose means you're going for both eggs and meat. Okay. And then the system. Do you want to do deep litter system, meaning you're going to put litter, sodas, coffee, and rice husk, okay, which has to be, normally is 4 to 6 inches on the floor that you can see there. Then the scale of the enterprise. Do you want to be fully commercial, or you want to be a mixed setup? A mixed setup means you're producing some of them to consume at home, but then others you can sell. Okay, Then the scale, this one is determined by the number of birds. Do you want to be small scale? You want to be medium scale, or you want to be large scale? Large scale, my friends, is the level of the Yuga chicks, the Nzika, the Bukomo, okay? Then of course, medium scale, and then the small scale. We are speaking of small scale if you're doing about 1,000 birds, but if you go beyond, then you're moving into medium scale, okay? Then financing, it's quite important that you understand where your money is going to come from, okay? Because when you start poultry farming, money is going to be a big deal. So your cash flow has to be there, because the day you don't have cash, you cannot buy feeds, or you cannot do the vaccination, etc. It's going to be a mess. When it comes to poultry, there is mass death. Mortality rate can be crazy. We normally try to limit it between 2 to 5%, but that's if you do the management right. If you don't do it right, there's going to be chaos. Okay? Then siting your business location is quite important. Access to reliable feeds, water, and power. Then issues of biosafety and biosecurity considerations. You have to keep this in mind at all times. Now, after you're done with your siting, please, you have to handle the housing, and let the housing be low cost. Guys, do not spend a lot of money setting. Like for instance, we never encourage a full brick wall. No, you cannot put double, I don't know how the builders call it, double something something. Normally, you have to do from the lower up to about 60 to 75 centimeters, around there. You make it a solid wall. After that, wire mesh. Also because aeration is pretty important. Now, the housing example that we're going to give here is for 300 layers that are being produced under deep litter system. Okay, so by the rule of thumb, when you're doing this calculation, for layers, the recommendation is 4 to 5 birds per square meter. For broilers, you can stretch 8 to 12, but 12 is for those who really do the management pretty well, okay? And it's important that you make consideration for a storage room. It has to be there, okay? So you can see if you're starting, for the start with 300 layers, you need a total of 84 square meters. That means 6 by 14 meter facility. If you can, please let the floor be concrete, and the concrete should be between 15 and 20 centimeters high. This is to keep your poultry house safe from many things that come from underground if you do not put concrete on the floor. Then the roofing, please make sure that when you're doing the roofing, let the overhang be there. Let some of the iron sheet pass beyond the wall, okay? So you can see how much you need to pass, okay? So like I already said, the lower wall has to be solid. It can be made of bricks, can be made of wood, but something solid, okay, to protect from water and blah blah blah. Upper wall, wire mesh. Then you can see that the ridge has to be a little high, okay? It's a bit not very safe for the purpose of proper ventilation, to keep the roof of your chicken house very low, the ridge low, because then it's going to deflect heat to come back. Then you need your deep litter. Can be, like I said, sawdust, rice husk. So minimum, let it be about 10 centimeters, and that's about 4 inches. That we recommend 12. No, we recommend 6 inches. Okay, and so in the rest of the chicken house, you make sure that you do the tanning every 2 weeks maximum. No, every twice a week. So you can do on a Wednesday and on a Sunday regularly, like that. But for the areas around the drinkers, when you see that water, not just when you see around it, it's why you need to turn to avoid dumping. That happens a lot. Then if you're doing layers, again, you have to build nests. Nests is where they do the laying. And again, for the 300 layers, we are saying that you need 60 boxes. And we recommend not more than 3 levels. Levels are called tiers. And make sure that you put it on opposite sides of the room, the long end really, because then in the middle you are putting the feeders and the drinkers. Then you must also put what's called roosts or perches. These are just lines really made of wood, made of you're going to see in the next slide, where the birds can play, exercise, jump around and all that. Okay, then I already spoken about the stocking density. The orientation, guys, your chicken house must run from east to west. Okay, the long end east to west. Why? Because of the sun. All right, because of the sun, and also the fact that many times the rain actually does the east to west thing. And then oneness, 5 hens. The when it comes to feeding, you can see how much they really feed per day per bird. So total spaces, drinkers. You're going to see, you're going to get this slide, so you're going to be able to just read them. Lighting is important. They need 14 to 16 hours. These are layers. Okay. Let me start running faster before. So I said low cost housing. Okay. As you can see, use low cost materials. Then you can see the laying boxes that are there. That's how you can design them. What you see at the front there, like with some handle, that's actually where they can stand before they can enter. They'll jump on that thing and then enter. Okay. Then you can see the feeder. Then you can see a roost or perch. Someone like, how do you give poultry swing? Yes, they need it. They need to exercise so that they can grow well. Then you have drinkers. You can see the drinkers that you can connect to the main, or drinkers that you just put its own water on it, and then your life goes on normally. Now, starting up cost, just setting up the building alone is going to cost you between 6.7 to 9.2. This is low cost. Then you're going to need another 2.8 to about 4.9 million for the equipment and fitting inside. When you have to select breed, the breed of the chicken is very important because it's going to determine the outcome. If you select a bad breed, be ready to incur a lot of losses. If you select a good one, be ready to be very, very happy, because you cannot improve a breed while the birds are already on the farm. There's something that we need to know very, very well. So there are some recommendations and considerations that you must make when you're doing your breed selection. Number one, it's advisable to create a stock from a commercial farm who do the breeding professionally. That's why you see guys from up country, you have to come to Kampala, to Mukono, to come and pick this chicken, because you have Yuga Chick in Wakisa side. They have proper hatcheries. Okay. And it's preferably, if you're going large commercial, to get birds that have lower burdens, and lower burdens mean they have not lived for long. So we prefer the day-old chicks. So when I say DOCs, we are speaking about day-old chicks. So we prefer that to go for this if you're doing broilers commercially and layers commercially. We prefer that. But if you can try the pullets and the cockerels for broilers, it's also fine. But when it comes to the dual purpose, those are just producing for the meat and for the eggs, then yes, both day-old chicks and both the day-old chicks and the pullets and the cockerels are really, really fine. Okay. When you're doing breed selection, observe the following. Look at the chicks, day-old chicks. Make sure that they're alert and active. When you see them droopy, looking down, that might be tricky. Look at them, make sure that they're clean. Look at the navel. Okay, make sure it's healed. It's not fresh. It doesn't have a wound. Then the body needs to be uniform. Okay, and looking normal. Check the vent, the behind. Make sure the vent is clean. The vent is the anus. In the equivalent of the vent is the anus, like in the human being. Then make sure that you trust your supplier. Please make sure that the supplier has records you know the age of the parent stock, and then the date that the birds really hatch. All these records, you have to see them and you come along with them. Okay? Sorry. Reject chicks that have been transported for more than 24 hours without temperature control. Now, if you go to select pullets and cockerels, make sure there are no lame ones. You don't take any lame birds, and make sure that by day 14 the birds have grown, and that there are no birds which are lagging behind in terms of growth. The ones which are below the average of the rest of the birds, you leave them behind. So we have some recommended breeds. Tina is going to speak about them, but I also thought that I could just show you them, the ones which are highly recommended in our East African context here. So you will again read about them. So you have the Cobb 500. It originates in the Czech Republic. You have the Ross 308 from the UK. We have the Arbo Aces Plus. It's from the USA. And then the Hubbard Classic. It's of French origin. So when you're looking at the information of your chick supplier, or when you're placing an order, and these ones are available, please try to look at them. Some of you are going to see that Cruellas are not here. There's a reason for it. You're going to look at a lot of the details again in the write-up that you see there. Those are broilers. When it comes to layers mainly, there is the ISA Brown. ISA is a French institute for selection of animals, really. So they do breeding. So when you see ISA Brown, it's just institute for the selection of animals. Like in Uganda, we have the narrow, blah blah blah. Then there is Bovans Brown. Bovans Brown is of Dutch origin. Then the other one is Lohmann Browns. It's from Germany. So you can see when you're speaking about deep litter and semi-intensive system, the one that comes at the very top is the Bovans Brown. So you're going to see also, because of the number of eggs that it lays, and then you can look at the feeding, how much they feed efficiency and adaptability, okay, plus the market perception because of the way the eggs appear and blah blah blah. Okay, the next that we're going to look at is the one that is recommended for dual purpose, both for eggs and for meat. And these ones, you don't need to keep them under deep litter. You do semi-intensive for a very short while, then you can always allow them to scavenge, or what you call the free range. So we have the Sassy Ruby tea. It's French. Ruby just means red, really. You can see it's deep red. It stands up. It's very energetic. Then we have the Croila. Croila is from India. Now, Croila is a crossbreed of two very ancient breeds of cattle. The Rhode Island Red, and then the sorry, it's the Rhode Island Red, and then the White Leghorn. White Leghorn, if we remember poultry, they are from the southern part of England generally. Croilers are from India. In terms of the White Leghorn and Rhode Island Red were crossbreed and then put under local conditions. Okay, they are allowed to adapt to the local conditions, and they became Croilers. And that's why when you see them, they come in numerous colors. The colors are many. Okay, as you can see in the picture there. Then we have the Kenbro. Kenbro is from Kenya. Okay, it's a crossbreed again of exotic breeds with the Kienyeji. Kienyeji are local ones. Okay, so you'll also read about how we do the system that are appropriate, the age at first laying, how many eggs they can lay. Okay, you can see the Cruella will do you 150 to 170 within a cycle. The whole point is that they adapt well, and but then on the productive side, you know, their situation there. So you can see that the Saso is actually more prolific generally of all the dual purpose birds. Now, when it comes to feeding, I'm going to run us through this very quickly. When it comes to feeding, it's important to match the feed to the bird type, the age, and purpose. This is the most critical bit. You cannot swap. Feed that needs to go for the broilers cannot be given to the layers, and vice versa. Or mash, which is for the growers, you can't give it to the finishers. They need to look at the quality of the feed. It's important not to do shortcut or to swap the ingredients. It's very key that you look at it. Then the third aspect is that you need to focus on the energy protein balance. Don't over focus on the protein, okay? Because the animal needs energy to do many things. Then for the layers, it's important that eggs that calcium and phosphorus is managed very well, especially as they move into starting to lay eggs. Okay, then when it comes to the form of the feeds, make sure that you understand which kind of food different age groups are supposed to be fed on. Okay, so like for instance, chicks, you normally use crumbles because they're easy to take, and then there is less wastage. Then when you look at broilers is normally better to go with pellets, okay, because then there's better feed conversion ratio and allows for faster growth. While when it comes to layers, you can use mash or also pellets, because then the mash reduces selective eating. Okay, then you need to manage the feeding. Make sure that there are enough feeders. Okay, for instance, for the standard feeders, feeding troughs that we have, you make sure that each can accommodate at least 50 to 75 chicks. And when it comes to the adults, just put between 8 to 10 centimeters for the head to feed. And then make sure that the feeders are at the height of the back of the birds to avoid wastage. If it's too much on the ground, then you know what the problem is going to be. Then avoid changing the feed too suddenly. Water is very critical. You can have nipples or you can have drinkers, which I already showed you there. Okay, so when it comes to water intake, for each gram of the feed, the birds actually need times 2 or 2.5 amount of water for the same. Okay, and then we need to check for the wet droppings not to mix with the feed that we have there. You make sure you clean the drinkers daily, flush lines regularly. Okay, then test the water quality if production drops, because there might be infections there might be contamination in the water. Then supplements, no, then birds are very sensitive to both heat and cold. Cold affects them when they're very young. Heat affects them when they are growing older. Okay, so it's very important that you manage the heat very well. Then there are important supplements that you really need to provide. For instance, the vitamins. Okay, you need some enzymes. You need things that you put in the feed. For instance, I'm mainly prophylactically, so that you're able to manage some infections, especially worms. Okay, Tina is going to tell us a little more about the vaccination bit. So you need to monitor, you need to measure, and you need to adjust constantly. You cannot be a telephone poultry farmer. You have to always be present on the ground. With that, taking so much of your time, I would like to end here and recommend that I'm going to give you these slides. Then you're going to see the details when you need to feed the broilers, when you need to feed the layers, okay? At which age do you give the starters, what do you give the growers, okay? Like I was telling you, who takes the mash, who takes the pellets, who takes, okay? All that. Thank you for listening. I want to hope that I did not speak alone. I want to hope that there were some people in the back there. I'm going to stop sharing and keep your questions after Tina is done. Over to you, Tina. Tina, are you there?
You might have to call her on the phone.
Tina.
I am here. Yes.
Yes.
Let me share. Good evening.
Okay.
Yes. Let me share and see.
And because we lost time, colleagues, you will bear with us. You will bear with us.
I think I'm sharing yours. Stop and do a fresh. Sorry. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
Oh,
good evening.
sorry. Good evening. How are we?
Oh, we're fine.
Am I the only lady in this place? Because I don't seem to hear a lady.
No comments.
Yeah, I need to be a bit gender balanced. But anyway, this is me. I don't know. Let me try to put a face to my name. So I am there. I'm trying to use two gadgets at the same time because at some point I went offline. So I don't want to have that mistake again. Okay. So, gentlemen, I'm going to be talking about from number 5 to number 10. So as you can already see, the ones highlighted in blue, I'll talk about brooding and flock management. But is my screen visible to start with?
Yes, you're visible.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Oh, very good. But just a recap, why poultry business? I know it is very important for you. Before you engage in a particular enterprise, you should be able to know why you need to engage in them. Of course, we want the food or the meat. We need the income. We need the manure. We need the raw materials like the feathers for other things, but also we need employment. Some of us are there because of the employment bits, but some people are also there because it is a hobby. They feel that it's very good to actually engage in poultry because it's just a hobby for them. So I'm going to talk a bit about factors to consider when starting a poultry enterprise. We need the skill. You just can't go there when you don't have the skill. We need the capital. It's very important. Francis talked about that. We need the land because you have to put your housing or infrastructure on the land as well. We need labor, which is of course technical and manual. And the housing, Francis talked about that. But also other things is feeding and the feeds, and then the record keeping. We can go on and on. Yeah, but the number of challenges we must know as we engage in the poultry business. Of course, there are a lot of, you can say, pests and disease or parasites and diseases. Those ones, you can't run away from them. We'll talk about them in a short while. But also we've looked around and we find that there's actually poor quality feeds. Sometimes we jump from, we go to the ones by grain piles, we are going to cowardice. So sometimes you look at all those feeds, you find that others are not quality like others. So that's a problem. But apart from that, there's also the high cost of feeds. It's very expensive, especially if the maize also goes up in terms of the price. So you see the cost is high. Then the poor stock. That's why Francis talked around, you need to go and look for the best stock. to start with in terms of the source, the quality, and the breed. But also the market. Sometimes the market is very challenging. People get into the business and everybody is there. And then your things are not going out. And then especially for broilers, if they are over, I would say 7 weeks, they're now eating on your profit. And then thieves. Sometimes if you don't keep them well, you don't have good infrastructure, you're liable to get thieves. And the season is coming, Christmas, people are going to be crying if they don't have that kind of security. And then inadequate knowledge and skills. People get into it because they think somebody is already in it. They also want to go there. Before you know it, the birds are dying. They're not vaccinating. They're not giving the right feeds. So those ones are also issues. And then high cost of veterinary inputs and services. Those ones are there. You must vaccinate on the different schedules. But also apart from that, when you have a disease outbreak, you have to call a vet person. And those are costs attached to that as well. And then there's poor timing in production. You find that at some point, things are not moving on, but you already have the stock and it is eating on your what? On your money. So poor timing is also another challenge. Now, as I get to the brooding, I want to talk about the characteristics of good quality day-old chicks. I think Francis talked a bit, but as you know, as you get them, they should have good physical appearance, they should look healthy, they should be of good size, and they should really have bright eyes and clear eyes. And then they should be free from any kind of legs or big deformities. Of course, we've seen this a lot. Some of them come when their legs are ready, they can't even walk, they're just kind of lying down. Those things are there, but they should have clean beaks, even the nostrils, all those things. And their feathers should be dry, shiny, those kind of things. But also they should be very inquisitive. Me, sometimes I try, when I slap a bit my hands, they all wake up. Yeah, those things. And then they should have straight legs. And the feathers should be clean and they should be active. Not the ones that always sit in one position, they can't run. Those ones are not good. So as we go on, brooding and flock management. Now, when I talk about brooding, of course, we need to look at design brooders that can actually work for us. You can actually use charcoal, you can use briquettes, you can use gas, you can even use really the electricity, really good bulbs that can give source of heat. That's very important. But also you need a trained person to be there to check every time how these chicks are behaving. And we must know that the first 7 to 14 days are very critical. So if we don't manage well, that is already an issue. There was a time I got my birds, I was not around, I was on the way to Kitgum. So I gave all the instructions, but because it was rainy season, somebody did not even actually put what I would say heat. I came back after 3 days, I'd lost like 50 birds. So these things are very critical. Now, what is brooding? Brooding is a process of improvising all the conditions a hen provides when raising its chicks. So, but right now we are going to be the mother of those chicks. So we need to provide for them warmth, the feed, the water, and everything. And it is done from day one when you get a chick to around other, maybe like 5 days, a week or 2, something like that. So it is very important to prepare the brooding room as you're doing the brooding. So as you do the preparation beforehand, we must have quality feed source. Of course, either the pre-starter or the starter. Water should be clean as you bring this. Of course, sometimes you need to even give them glucovit or glucose because they have just arrived and they need to get some energy. And then veterinary services when recommended. But before you place them in a room, in that brooding room, you need to make sure it is clean and you disinfect the place. And when you're going to brood, sometimes people use very many things. You can use peppers, you can use, I would say, you can use peppers, you can actually even use what they call maybe sacks. Yeah, something like that. So the first 2 or 3 or 4, 5 days, that's what you're going to be using before you can actually take them to what we call the sawdust on that. So the materials for brooding, we need to have charcoal stoves, the charcoal, the lamp. We need to have the chicken feeders, the drinkers. We're going to vaccinate, so we need to have some of these things as well. But I told you already, we need to have glucose at the start. Yeah, so house for brooding should be present, very clean, disinfected. You need to know where your chick source is from, should be authentic, good. The litter, and I use the peppers, I already talked about that, but prepare the brooder very well. So warm the room about 2 hours before receiving the day-old chicks, so that when they arrive, the place is warm. You don't get a shock where your things are very cold and they can actually die. Yeah. So receiving the day-old chicks, as you receive them, the first thing you need to know is, we already talked about a number of things, but count the number of chicks and record them. At some point, we talk about record keeping. So when you see there are some which are sick or weak ones, we try to isolate them. But also make sure in the water you're going to give them when they arrive, it should have at least some energy giving item like glucovit or something like that. It's very important. And the water should not be really very cold. It should be a bit of warm. So at some point now you'll be able to provide the feeds after about 2 hours. Just like a person, if you're from fasting, you don't need to give somebody now solid food immediately. First start with the porridge, things like that. Let the stomach get acclimatized or used before you can bring the real what? Solid foods. And then balance the warmth in the room. And when you look at this picture of mine, you can be able to see that really the warmth there is really good. Why? Because the chicks are actually balanced. But if you find them in one position, sleeping on top of one another, you just know that the room is cold. They're trying to find warmth by themselves. So you need to know that you need to add the what? The warmth. That's very important. Now on routine flock management, when you're a startup, of course, we need to start small. You know what I do? I actually bring every 2 weeks. So the highest I've gone is about 600 every 2 weeks, and I do broilers. But of course, I also do the broilers a bit, but the broilers is more of what I do. I don't want to put a lot. Yeah, I'm just progressing bit by bit. The housing is there, but I'm progressing bit by bit. So it's very important to be realistic when you're stocking. And then also, Francis already talked about regular turning of the litters. Usually after 5-6 days of brooding, we are going to now remove the peppers and they now be on litters. And the litters can be the sawdust and all that. But make sure it is dry and clean and you regularly turn it. And then encourage low-cost lighting programs. These birds actually need a lot of light and they eat all through the night, especially for the broilers and the layers and all that. So we need to ensure all that. Now I'm going to the health management and biosecurity. Now, when we talk about health, we know it is a normal body condition. So yeah, they should be healthy. We talk about disease, it is the abnormal body condition. There's something happening. Yeah, so it's deviating from the normal. Now, when we talk about parasites, the organisms that live on or on the expense of the animal or the poultry, and of course they're feeding on them, and these ones can cause disease. So to continue with diseases, so we have common diseases of chicken, of course the Newcastle disease. Yeah, you can see them if they have greenish watery diarrhea. No, that is Newcastle. So there's no treatment. That's why we have schedules of vaccination. You need to vaccinate them at the time. And then we have coccidiosis. Of course, it's bloody diarrhea, whitish diarrhea, and the treatment is there. We've seen that. And then we have gomboro, whitish diarrhea. The anus can be swollen, and it occurs mostly in chicks below 9 weeks. No treatment, but you need to follow the vaccination schedules. That's how you prevent. Yeah. So we also have the fowlpox. That is very important. No treatment, but we follow vaccination schedules. The fall typhoid, follow vaccination schedules. And then the Merkel's disease, that one is normally vaccinated at what? From archery. It is very important. We need to know that where you're buying your day-old chicks already has been vaccinated against that. And then parasites of birds. We have the fleas, we have the mice, the ticks, the birds, and this can be controlled. You just go to an agrovet shop, they'll give you doodle dust and all that. But also hygiene is very, very important. But as you get to continue ahead, you know that sometimes you can even get organic things that can be able to help you, like pawpaw seeds and all that. Those ones are also very important. Even some people use neem, marijuana. I will not talk about marijuana, but some people also use that one. Those are also local ways of preventing some of these diseases, some of these things we've talked about. Now, there are common causes of poor health in chicken, dear gentlemen. If there's a lot of stress due to heat, it can cause disease. If there's unusual noise, if they're competing for food and space, yeah, so they're not getting enough of what the body wants, and that actually reduces the immune system. They can even get sick. If there's nutrition deficiency, it can also cause poor health. External parasites, we talked about them. Yeah, can also feed on them and reduces on their health capacity. But also internal parasites like worms and all that. But also injuries. These things play a lot. Sometimes you might be able to catch them and then they get injured in the process. Maybe they bleed. It can be a point where other things can enter. but also mycotoxin and other poisons. So what we give our birds should be quality feeds. Don't give them maize that is actually full of aflatoxin. It also goes to them and goes to us when we eat them. And then the last one is the pathogenic infections like from fungi, bacteria, and viruses. These are very, very common. We shall look at that as we go on. So how the disease spread? There's a vertical transmission, usually from the infected cock or the hen. It goes to the eggs, and then the chicks come when they have that. Now, those ones can also be one way they get diseases. But another way it can be horizontal transmission. The infected hen or cock, when they get in contact with the other one that is not infected and is susceptible, they get disease. But also that's another one is from infected birds. A visitor comes, the person has visited other farms that are infected and then brings in the infection, and then your chicks also get them. So that one also is there. So how do we manage them? For pesticides and disease prevention, it is good to fence. So if you have birds that are moving, like free range, make sure you fence them, doesn't get to the neighbor and pick disease from there. Make sure there's good feeding, so that when anything comes, the body can fight. Make sure there's good hygiene and sanitation. Sometimes some of these things come because of poor hygiene, but also by safety measures. Before somebody enters your farm, they should have something to disinfect whatever they came with. And then quarantine. If a bird is sick, make sure you place them in another place. That is like isolating the sick. But also follow vaccination schedules as recommended, and routine treatment and spraying using drugs. Now, diseases that affect chicken can be divided into 3 categories. Those that you can prevent through vaccination, it is there, like Newcastle, Gomboro, and the rest. But those that you can prevent by treatment, also it is there, yeah, like coccidiosis. And then those ones that you can be able to manage through biosecurity measures, okay, like cholera and all that, and good nutrition. Gentlemen, as we get to biosecurity as well, it refers to any precautions you take to prevent diseases from entering or surviving on your farm. So what are some of the biosecurity measures that we need to put in place? First of all, start with healthy foundation flock. So get it from the right source, yes. And then maintain closed flock. Avoid direct or indirect contact of your flock with other birds. Even birds can actually bring for you diseases in your farm. Even animals, even strangers, the visitors that come to the farm, make sure they actually have certain things that like biosecurity measures to enable that. But also you need to buy birds that are resistant to some of the diseases. And then make sure follow vaccination schedules and have a conducive environment for them. Like turn the litters often, make sure it is dry and all those kind of things. But also practice good sanitation. Things should be clean from outside to inside your poultry house. Make sure you minimize stress. It can be stress in terms of no water, stress in terms of heat, all that. And feeding your birds on a balanced ration. I know farmers where at some point they say, these birds are now big. Let me just give them broken maize or bran. Those things also can actually affect them. And then limit visitors, especially traders. Somebody coming to buy must have visited maybe even 4 or 5 other farms. Now, when they come to your farm and those other farms are infected with certain diseases, they can bring for you. And then there should be dedicated farming clothes or footwear. Things like gumboots. When I'm going to enter my poultry house, I should leave the other wear, maybe like my footwear, and then I get another one, which is for the poultry house. Also, we need to control wild birds, the rats, and the dogs, because they can actually carry some of these diseases. They are like vectors. Okay? Yeah, so those things are very, very important. So in regards to vaccination schedules, I have already put something up here. Let me just go straight to it. It is here. So we said there's a vaccine that they give you from from the archery. And then, of course, there's a Newcastle disease. That one you're going to do it yourself. So it is very important as you buy your day-old chicks, let the supplier also tell you what to do. Normally, they have those schedules or calendars when to vaccinate. Yeah. So Newcastle, infectious bronchitis, Gomboro, fall pox, fall typhoid, and all that. So those schedules are there. It depends on if it is layers, if it is broilers, if it is croilers. Yeah, but for me, for example, I do more of broilers. So I know in the first week, yeah, in the first week, before the first week ends, I have the schedules I need to do Newcastle disease, stroke what? IBD. In the second week, I have to do Gomboro. The third week, again, I do Gomboro. And the fourth week, I again do what? Newcastle disease, stroke IBD. So I know by that time, within the 5th or 6th week, I'm able to sell. But if you're going an extra mile in terms of broilers, so which means it's going to take longer, that's where now other shots are coming in for the vaccination as well. Okay. So access to veterinary services, it's very important you have a vet person that you know that if things get out of hand, they're able to help you. But also to reduce costs, sometimes we tend to vaccinate these things ourselves. Yeah, when you get into business and now you're acclimatized to it, you can do the vaccinations yourself with your workers. But if a disease breaks out, make sure you have a vet person to support you. Know the clinical signs, what is happening, and you tell your vet very well, and they're able to diagnose and what? Prescribe for you the right, I would say, drugs. These are just photos of what you could have seen already in your farm or even for somebody's farm. So you can see some of the diseases that are actually happening. So you need to know, what are some of the signs? If it is like this, I know it is Newcastle, I know it is fowlpox, I know it is this. So these things are very important. So as you go to the vet shop, you know exactly what you need to tell the vet person. Okay, so other common chicken diseases, they are there. You'll be able to read them, but it's very important you know them and what causes them. Is it a virus? Is it a bacteria? Yeah. Where does it affect? Is it respiratory and all that? I will continue. This is also still something for your consumption. You'll be able to read. We'll give you all that. Yes. So on production management, for the broilers, of course, when you bring the broilers, you start with either starter or pre-starter. So for me, I do for the first 2 weeks. And then after that now, I put them on growers and finishers later. But to reduce on the cost, me after the first 2 weeks, after them going on pre-starter or starter, now what I do is I formulate my own feeds. Of course, I buy the concentrate, and then I'm able to mix with some portions of maize bran and of course broken maize in the right proportions until the 5th or 6th or the 7th week. Then I'm able to do what? To sell them off. Okay. So you need to focus on the feed conversion ratios and mortality under heat stress. It's very important for the broilers. Yeah, but plan to ensure that for broilers, you match them with demand. Don't overstock, and yet there is nothing. People are not going to buy. So during festive seasons, Ramadan, Christmas, Easter, you know that the demand is very high. You can actually stock better quantities. And then there are some seasons you can reduce a bit unless you already have constant market. And for the layers, we already said that also that is very important. What we want from them is the eggs. Yeah, it's very important that you give them quality feeds that will be able to give you eggs at the recommended time as well. Yeah, and maintain at least 80 to 85 or even 90% out of your flock giving you eggs every day. And of course, the quality of the eggs and the size also matters. Yeah, and then for dual purpose, of course, you can make them scavenge after some period of time, but make sure you supplement the feeds, maybe in the morning and evenings. Have some good level of housing for them, but don't forget about them. You need to vaccinate them. Again, it's the common diseases, and in any case, the disease is coming up, make sure you treat them. Some of us believe that now if these ones are dual purpose, they just scavenge, not giving them food, not giving them anything, let them look for it. In the end, they will not grow faster. They will not grow faster, and you'll keep them for longer periods, even you not beat the weight target. So let's also look at that. Under waste management and environment, gentlemen, as we venture into the poultry business, what comes out also at some point is also not nice. Of course, you're going to remove your litters and all that, and you need to dispose them somewhere. But at the end of it all, we know, of course, poultry manure is very valuable. You can put them in your, I would say, in your land or in your garden to add fertilizer and all that. You can even sell them. People are buying them. Yeah, but the issue is make sure that if you're using it, it's supposed to be composite to reduce the odor, flies will come up, and some of these things will also lead to pathogen load getting high. But also, as you're using it for your urban production, it's good. Make sure you follow food safety issues. Now, for what I do in my poultry place, I also have a bit of urban gardening. So I actually put them in my little farm. It's not a big farm. I put them in my little farm. I plow it. Of course, they decompose. I first put them somewhere, they decompose, and I actually add them to my little farm. They're in kind of blocks. So I'm seeing that the farm is improving because manure is decomposing, and yeah, the plants are growing well. So you need to tell your workers to really decompose them well, but also if it's about disposing it, should be actually very good. Now, especially if you're in an urban setting, your neighbors might complain if there is stench or odor coming from your farm. Yeah. So in regards to marketing and value chain, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, when we talk about marketing, we talk about the 7 P's in marketing. Of course, the product we have, we are into poultry, whether it is live birds, whether it is already dressed, whether it is the eggs and all those things, the product, but of course the price also matters. Where you're selling it, the place, what are you going to people to know about your business, that is promotion, the process that you take, the physical evidence, and of course the last one is the people that you engage in your farm. So live birds, you market them, you can sell them at the roadside, you take them to the market. For the eggs, people can come and buy from your farm, you can be a wholesaler, retailer, supermarket. So all those things are there. So I think with issues of marketing, we might be well versed with that. But of course, there are market risks as well. Prices drop depending on the season or depending on if there's a lot of supply. So prices normally drop for eggs, and sometimes even for broilers, you find you're stocked with it. No one is buying because the market is flooded. So you have to put the price down and sell it off so that they don't eat your what? Eat your profits. Now, we can also do value addition. It's very important. Yeah. Now, for the broilers, sometimes you find that, okay, it has reached the weight already. What should I do for you not to eat on my profit? Because these things consume a lot. You can actually dress them, lower them, and then when supermarkets need them, you take them to supermarkets, hotels, and all those things. Those are very important. But also, if you want to go an extra mile and start roasting, that is also okay, depending on what your vision or dream. Yeah. But also for the eggs, you grade them according to sizes and all that. You package, you brand, you sell. Yeah, others are boiling the eggs. So you know the kind of product that you need to rub shoulders with, so that your products get to the market faster, so that you're in business every time. Yeah. Now when you get to records, yeah, so records are very important in the farm. It helps you to monitor progress of your business. Yes, to calculate profits or loss. You need to know how much money you have spent, how much money you are getting, yes, and what you have got as profit, or if you've got as loss. Or even you need to know how much money you have spent to come up with a unit. In terms of one broiler, how much have I got? So mine is normally between about 8,500 to about 9 or 10,000. Okay? So, and I sell at 14,000, I know I have a bit of maybe 4,000 as profit. So also records help you to actually identify the source of your income, but also track the tools, equipment of the farm, know the visitors that come around, yeah, but also reminds you when to treat when you have a vaccination schedule. That is also a record. So it can be very simplified. Me, I have a number of records, but there's one I just put within the walls where the birds are. It really shows me when the birds came. Are there any deformities? Did they eat? Did they vaccinate? And all those kind of things. We've talked a lot, but it's very good to have a weighing scale as well. Let me not forget about this. So you're able to know after a particular period of time, I don't know, a day or 2 or 3, are my birds gaining weight? You need to also weigh. That is very important. Yeah, but also the feed, sometimes you need to weigh and know how much they consume. Okay. Now, in terms of the key performance indicators, you need to understand, of course, the feed conversion ratios. The eating this much, is it translating into the body weight gain? Okay, those things. Now you are into poultry business. The cost per weight, how much are you spending? Yeah, how much have you spent to come up with this particular broiler? How much are you getting when you sell? The cost per tray, how much are you spending to get a tray of eggs? How much are you getting when you sell at maybe 12,000 or 11,000 or 10,000? So you should be able to know that and it helps to know if you're in business or not. Usually a good record is a touch. So it's very important to keep records, and the record should be very simple and cheap. So that even if you yourself, who is knowledgeable, the most technical person is not around, even your workers can be able to what? To record. The types of records at the farm, we have production records, we have the feeds records, how are they feeding, we have the health records in terms of the vaccination schedules, how many are sick and all that, mortality records, how many did they get their old chicks, and how many are dying every day. That's if it is there, but God forbid, we need to have them not to die. And then your client records, people who are buying, even the suppliers records, even the cost of the housing as you start, how much have you spent on housing and equipment? Even the weather records, is it hot or not? Is it cold? If it is cold, you might take longer period brooding. Then you spend more, yeah? Even the sales records, when you sell, you need to have receipts and all those things for documentation purposes, okay? But other type of records is the type of visa you use, okay? And the costs. These days now we buy, so that a bag is at 3,000. Those days was like 152, even sometimes used to be for free. You just need to pay somebody to actually put it for you in a sack. Now the cost is increasing. Even if you know how the number of birds you have culled and the reasons why. Was it because of sickness or something like that? Even sometimes you eat the birds, but pay for it. So family consumption, the breed source, the archery date, and the cost. Okay? Let's get to risk management and common pitfalls. So feed shortage and price hikes. Those things happen. I gave an example at some point. You find in some cases where the price of maize has increased, and that will even make the price of the feeds increase, starting with even the concentrate to the price of the maize, the broken maize. Disease outbreaks, especially Newcastle disease, Gomboro, coccidiosis, all those things. We need to manage them. We talked about biosecurity measures. Poor quality old chicks from informal suppliers. Know where you're getting your quality chicks from. In Uganda, we have a lot. Binzika, we have Kuku, we have Quantum, we have very, very, very many. SR, there are too many, including even what? The ones we've talked about, Yuga chick and all that. So you need to know which one works best for you. Yeah. And then also there's dependence on a single buyer or trader. We have to diversify our market so that you don't depend on only one person. If that person doesn't come, or the person actually now is not in business, what are you going to do? So we don't need to depend on only one buyer, not even only one supplier. Then poor outrage. Sometimes you only have one power source for brooding. Then the power disappears in terms of, so what are you going to do? You can shift from the lamp and then you come to what? Something else. So the broilers don't die or your chicks don't die. So as I conclude, is what they call quality control of poultry products. We need to limit use of antibiotics. Okay, it is very important. But also we should maintain hygiene and sanitation at all levels, whether from the brooding place to the main place. We need to maintain, even the workers themselves have to maintain hygiene for themselves. Okay, that's why we say there is biosecurity issues, measures and all that. And proper feeding, it's very important. Check your farm regularly. If you don't, you will find that at some point they're saying they're feeding when they're not. You bought feeds that they're selling it. So let's try to check. And then things to do with disease prevention and controls at all levels. Those are things that we need to also look at. Environmental protection. How do you dispose your waste? Of course, the waste is good, manure, but how do you dispose it? And then the legal means of transportation of birds and their products. How do you transport your birds? Okay. So for me, normally when I dress my chicken, and then possibly some of these hotels, they need them. Of course, I don't put them in a cavera. I have some kind of buckets. So I make sure is the way I transport them, and it's good. Yeah. So you need to handle your birds also in a human way. It's very important. And then observe poultry, freedom and rights. And then there's veterinary inspection. That's why I said that we need to have a vet at your disposal in case something happens. Okay. So my key points or take-home points or parting shots, gentlemen. One is enterprise planning. Before you get into the poultry business, make sure you plan. Have all the things we've talked about in the right position or order or something like that. But also know your competitors. Don't start Yet the market is flooded. Okay, know them and know their weaknesses. So how will you come in to ensure that you actually override them? Have a vision. Why are you doing that? But also make sure you gain skills every day. Thank you for attending this webinar, because now you're also gaining skills. Maybe there's something you didn't know, now today you will know. But also we also need to know what we don't know. We need to hear from you. And then we need to do value addition to keep the value chain. So sometimes you need to add value so that the market is enticed with what you're having. And then collective marketing. You need to look at the buyers that actually buy collectively, and also be flexible. That's what we talked about in periods where we don't need to actually have a lot of production. You'll be flexible, just for example. And then enterprise diversification and integration. You can diversify your enterprise. If you have the money, you have the space, you can say, let me do 2 things at a go. If it is workable for you, I do my broilers. People are asking for dual purpose, like broilers. I also have that at the side. But also it's very important to love and have interest for the enterprise, because if you don't have that passion, you can be sure embark on rearing local chicken because of the numerous advantages they possess. So as we start, you can start with the local chicken, and then you come there. And then know where to find quality feeds, drugs, and then vet medicines as well. So with that, I would want to say thank you. I don't know if people are still with me. Are we okay? Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for the presentation.
Good, thank you. I thought I'd lost you at some point. Yes, Francis, I think I am done.
Thank you very much, Tina. That was really, really elaborate. And I'd like to apologize that time has flown big time, but I think we understand exactly why. Because this is really it, okay? So now, let's first give Tina a very serious round of applause. Then we move to the questions. Okay? There's already a question here, question 1. Apart from Yoga Chick, which other companies does good supply of quality breed of chicks feed and are regular within East Africa, and how shall be linked with them? 2, is it good to start with your own incubator when starting poultry farming business? Tina, you go first. This is from Enoch Olia.
Okay, thank you very much, Francis. Are you getting me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Apart from Yoga Chick, I think at some point I also said that we have a number of suppliers. We have Cuckoo Chicks. I also use Cuckoo Chicks. I also tried Quantum before. I also did Ken Chick before. There's also SRA. There's Binzika. There's actually a number of them. Okay. Yes. But sometimes you can even do direct from research, narrow. Yeah, but the ones that we have at our disposal that have actually what we call agents where we are located. For example, if you're in Gulu, you're going to find Binzika somewhere, you're going to find Kuku somewhere, you're going to find, Quantum somewhere. So it's not only Yoga Chick, but there are a number of them. So just try the first, second, or third time and see what works best for you. Sometimes you might be very loyal here, and at some point, their quality reduces, then you need to change. It also depends on the parent stock. Thank you. And then the other question was about if I'm starting, should I start with my own archery? It depends on the money that you have and also your expertise. Yeah, but for a layman farmer like me or someone else, I would wish to start, or I started myself by buying the day-old chicks from those companies I have mentioned. But if you have all the capital, you can do your archery and everything, but where are you getting the parent stock from? So you also need the parent stock, or you're buying the fertilized eggs. Also, it is possible. Yeah.
Exactly.
So any can work depending on the money you have and if you think you can actually be able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Let me just add that to buy an incubator hatchery, you need quite some bit of money because they're not cheap, and then you basically need very high level training, what you call occupational level 3 and 4, to be able to run the incubator. Of course, you're going to not only invest in the hatchery but also the power source and so on and so on, and it takes quite some bit of it. So for the start, please make sure that you have a lot of money if you want to do the hatchery. But again, why do you want to start very, very high? My comment about the suppliers of the chicks, to add on to what Tina already said, is that you need to visit farms, okay? You need to see how chicks from other sources are doing, okay? So that means that it's important to know the track records. Normally, the safest bet are the industrial players that have been around for a while, because then there's quite a big pool through which you can know what they are good at and what they are not good at. Okay, then you also see the kind of breeds, guys. We already spoken about this. If you're looking at broilers, which are the breeds to go for? If you're looking for the dual purpose, which ones to go for? If you're looking at layers, which ones to go for? This information then would really help you determine who to go with. Among the ones that Tina listed, I just want to say that Bukomo, uh, Chicken Limited are also quite good. They're here in Mukono. So you could, yes, I'm sure Tina can also provide the contacts for them. Sorry, that's the little that I wanted to add. There's a question from David that said, our major challenge in South Sudan is the lack of chick suppliers. So I would like to know how efficient and effective are the homemade incubators and how you can advise. Okay. Tina, homemade incubators. My mind was on hatchery at a very higher level.
Okay, thank you. I think the homemade incubators will support you in terms of, yeah, because if you're now in South Sudan, it's actually very easy for you to buy fertilized eggs if you have transport means to take them there, and then you're able to hatch it there by yourselves. Yeah, so we didn't talk about homemade incubators here, but we can research more. There are a number of things you can do to ensure that actually you provide the right heat source that the mother hen can give to the eggs for 21 days to ensure that they actually hatch. So those things are also very possible, but I would believe that it also limits you on the number of eggs to be hatched if you want to go fully commercial as well.
Exactly.
So if you want to go extra mile in terms of a little bit of full blast from 100 or more birds, you might need a bit of a tiny incubator, I would say. Yeah, but if those local ones, it might not give you more than 100, I would say, or you need more. Yeah, but it is still possible. We didn't talk about it here, but it's still possible. You can actually just buy the fertilized eggs and you're good to go. Yeah, thank you.
The other thing which I'd like to really add here is that the number of birds in a batch needs to make business sense. So if your incubator can only do 100, then that means Tina, for layers, is that feasible? Won't you just be eating? Won't they just be eating your money?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, very true. Because layers now you're going to keep it for the next 4 to 5 months before you can start seeing eggs.
yeah,
So if
because
you now, yeah,
eggs come at week 18.
yeah, so it might not be very feasible for you unless if you want to do dual purpose. They run around and then they're going to be giving you eggs, but
Yeah.
do not lay you eggs like for what? Like the layers would do in terms of the consistency as well. Yeah.
With layers, we normally recommend 300, but for the start.
Yeah.
The questions from Edward. How can you manage infectious coryza? I hope I have guessed right. Or Korea. in infection means something else. I just guessed. Edward, did you mean coryza?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Tina, you want to begin?
Let me see how.
Have you used herbs before?
That one I've not seen in my farm, but what we need to do with the infectious coryza, at some point I talked about diseases that affect chicken can be divided into 3 categories. There's what can be prevented through vaccination, like Newcastle, Gomboro, and the rest. And then there's what that you can actually be able to prevent by treating when something happens, like coccidiosis. And now coryza, now it is through biosecurity measures. So you need to have good sanitation and nutrition. Now coryza and then cholera, those are some of the things that come up because of poor sanitation and nutrition issues. So let's ensure that we have good sanitation and good nutrition as well. So it is basically about biosecurity measures to start with. Thank you.
Thank you. Edward, the herbs that I've seen farmers use, and sometimes it's also effective, include garlic. Okay, you pound the garlic, and then you put it in the water and then filter. Okay, you don't make sure that the other part of the garlic. Ginger is another one. Oregano, but also eucalyptus leaves, the fresh ones. You also do the pounding, okay, and then ready to put in water. But the efficacy of their active principles, I failed to find any literature for them. Also because I think it's quite a community practice that no one in the medicinal world, in the formal world, has really bothered, because erythromycin and then oxy and then talosin quite do a fantastic job for it. Papa's hand is up, but Tina, we do have here a question that say, what are the differences between pre-starter and starter? And then how do you handle heat stress on the farm? If you could answer that, then Papa's hand is up.
Okay,
And you
let me
guys
start with how to handle heat stress on the farm. When Francis spoke about infrastructure and housing, we need to make sure that the housing is actually to the recommended, I would say, standard or something. So we need a lot of ventilation, okay? A lot of ventilation for our house. So usually from the ground to about where you're going to have the start of the window should be around 1 meter. That's where you can actually maybe have something which is enclosed, but above 1 meter should be actually just full of vents. So which means there's free movement or flow of air in and out. So there should be very good ventilation. So anything that is less than that, you'll have a lot of heat getting stocked within your poultry house, and that affects the poultry as well. So good aeration and good ventilation is how you're going to handle heat stress. Which one was the second question? Sorry.
But I also want to make a communication that it's approaching 8 p.m. and I know some colleagues would want to leave. The chat window is going to remain open as always, so you can keep posing the questions in the chat window and we will respond to them. Okay?
Yep.
But we'll give Papa the chance to ask the question. But here what's the difference between pre-starter and starter? Tina, if you could answer that, then the rest we will see how to handle them. Of course, we'll put the answers in the chat, and then we'll also be sharing the presentation as well.
Okay, maybe another thing on how to handle the heat stress is don't have a lot of your birds in one place. So I would say the population also matters. If you have too many birds, of course they're going to respire, and of course you find that these birds are bringing in a lot of a lot of, I would say, water, and then at some point, so let's try to make them sparsely populated, recommended as it is. That also will manage issues of heat stress. Now, somebody is asking about pre-starter and starter. Ladies and gentlemen, usually what we start with is pre-starter, but sometimes they are used interchangeably. Yeah, they are used interchangeably. But pre-starter, these are special feeds that are usually used to feed mainly broilers from I would say 1 day old to 7 days hatching. So they contain about between 22 to about 25 protein. Okay. Yeah. But the ones for layers are about 20%. Then now starters are normally fed until about 6 weeks old. But for us, we normally do around 2 weeks old. Okay. And then the only thing inside there is the protein content, which varies. So with the pre-starter, the protein content is about 22 to about 25% of protein. Okay. And then for the starter, it is about 18 to 20% protein. Okay. Yeah, so that is basically it. And then of course the growers now comes when you're feeding them after maybe from around 3-4 weeks, and the protein content is a little lower, which is about 15 to 16% of protein. And Francis talks about don't give them every time protein balance, okay, with the carbohydrates. So that is why we're emphasizing on the protein content as well. So the issue is pre-starter is from 1 to 7 days mostly, yeah. But sometimes people use it interchangeably. Instead of using pre-starter, they just use starter from 1 day to 2 weeks. I think I've answered that. Thank you.
So let me just say, thank you very much, Tina. Let me just say that the equivalent of the pre-starter is for the pre-starter is colostrum in the humans, because it's like the first bunch of nutrients that a child receives. Emma is saying next time we can suggest a topic early enough and we can contribute more. With this topic, we have also invited people on the value chain, especially agriculture financing, how you can get it all going. As a constant student of agriculture, I'm so happy and I have learned a lot. Keep it a good job. Emma, this is quite important. Normally, if there are things that we have not covered, we are really happy that it's brought about, then we can really plan. Agricultural financing is a big challenge, so if you could know options that are available, that's really important and good. So thank you for that. Guys, it's 2 minutes to 8 and I'm so guilty that you've taken so much additional time. Papa, let's give you this opportunity. The questions of Amama will be answered in the chat. It's saying, what are the permissions required in poultry farming to avoid future problems? I think in Tina's presentation, you're going to find some of that. Then what are the common problems which poultry farmers face? Again, it's in the presentations of Tina, which will be shared here as well. So, Papa, 1 minute you ask, then we will wind up. It's 8. Papa John, your hand is up. Okay, if it's not possible, I would like to thank all of you for keeping around.
Sorry, I've encountered some issues with my Outlook. Basically, I'm having only a few questions. The rest I've already put in the chat and was able to answer. But ideally, I think first of all, I will thank Christine for the presentation as well. I think I learned a hard way. Some of these things I do not anticipate, especially during planning. You talk about timing, because I planned for a dual purpose, but also due to some challenges, my colleagues have already highlighted issues related to suppliers. I think this is also something that is common for us in South Sudan. We don't have really trusted supplier within the country. I think also you highlighted about planning, which we also plan, but now we have issues related to middlemen. I think there's ideally people who are dealing with some company and you are trying to go through the middleman. And sometimes you find when I place the order, sometimes I stay for 2 months, and also it affects my planning. So that actually that forced me to also okay, let me try broiler, but also because I do not plan well for broilers, but I learned a hard way, especially issues relating to the human resource who will be managing, which needs also someone who is really skilled and trained in poultry. I really had a lot of challenges when I was maybe in the field. One whom I assigned who do not even know. I found they opened the door for the day old chicks, and most of them went outside. I think those are the hard way I learned. I think also there was incident of ammonia accumulated, especially with broilers. Sometimes you talk about ventilation. There was some incident of ventilation. We had accumulative of ammonia. Once you go to the house, you feel something irritating in your eyes. And we really identify. I was trying to research, and I was finding that this is due to the droppings, and now accumulated more ammonia. So which means I need to also improve on the ventilation. So those are the basically. Then also that instance of the target weight for your business. I think we just do like maybe for, I see there is a uniform, there is no proper uniform weight or appearance for the chicks. I saw some are young, some are a bit bigger. That's what one of the question I just need to add. What could be the factors or that contribute to something, maybe the poultry are not uniformly. I think out of maybe 1% out of the birds, some are not really growing. They're still young. They look small compared to the rest. What could be the issue? And also because I was not having a weighing scale, because my target was to be 30 days for me to sell off. But now without this weighing scale, I cannot be able. And also I'm trying to target at least 1 kg per once the bird are reaching 1 kg. Then also the difference, because there will be some carcass weight and also the gross weight. How could I differentiate the estimate of a carcass before you slaughter and address, and also before? How will I weigh? That is because I don't have weighing scale, and that is also something that affecting me. I think I don't want to bother much. If the platform is still open, I will be able to post whenever I had some question. But mainly, I will be talking about that incident, what I just highlighted. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Papa. Let me just give one last answer. Pellegrin, it's not advisable to use treated water. You need distilled water, you need clean water if you're doing vaccination. They are the way we do with human beings. When they're mixing drugs for you, do they use treated water from taps and all that? No. So treat your chicken just as well as you treat yourself when you're taking medicine in. Colleagues, it's 8 minutes, it's 4 minutes past 8 o'clock.
Francis,
Yes, please, go ahead.
as they get to buy the vaccination, they give them that water as well. So
Yes,
don't only get the vaccine, but they will also give you the water. Sometimes they even give you the needles for injection. So request
yes,
for that. Request for it.
yes.
It's part of the package. It's part of the package for the vaccination. You request for it.
So, Tina, thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation. And then the audience also, please feel free to reach out to us. If you need to be supported in a bigger group, you can also reach out, and then we see how we can support you. Otherwise, have a wonderful evening and stay very, very safe. You can propose any additional poultry topics in the chat, and we will see what we can do about it. Emma already spoken about one on the financing bit. Thank you. Over and out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good evening.